You were able to get away with a sample of element 115. How much did you get away with?
No comment.
Nighttime test flights, unofficially, while off the base. What did you see?
The test flights I saw off the base, actually the best test flight was witnessed by my friends who I brought out there. At the exact moment the craft was hopping around and doing some really impressive maneuvers, I had turned around and I think was looking for the video camera or something to that effect. But I missed some of the most impressive maneuvers. But the craft was similar to what was done before that I had seen close up, other than the fact that it went above the mountain range, moved a much greater distance at a much higher rate of speed.
How were you able to find out about the test flight schedules?
The test flight schedules were told to me specifically because I was probably going to have to be present during those times. And at that time, the test flights were taking place on Wednesday nights. And from what they said, that was because that was statistically the least amount of traffic in the area. And that's all that they were concerned about.
Does the propulsion system release any sort of discharge or exhaust?
There was a high voltage discharge on the bottom of the craft, but as far as there being an exhaust, there was none.
Why did they appear as glowing balls of light in the night sky?
Well, that's kind of the same reason why a neon light or a fluorescent light lights up. What you're dealing with is a high energy source in essentially a gas atmosphere, oxygen, nitrogen. And when you apply enough energy to a gas molecule, they emit photons, they emit light. And I don't think it's anything, it's really a byproduct of how the craft operates. When it's emitting that much energy, the gas surrounding the craft emits light, the same reason why lightning is visible. You have a huge electrical discharge, and the gas emits light in the form of lightning bolt. If you were going to see one of these crafts at night operating, it would appear really as a glowing ball or just a bright light in the sky from a distance. Even close up, you'd see a glowing halo around it. This is typically what you'd see in your normal UFO sighting, if you've heard them a lot. However, keep in mind that lights in the sky are caused by much more common things than flying saucers.
Tell us a little more about the aurora you witnessed taking off out of Area 51.
It was a large craft, and the one glimpse I got of it was from the rear, and it had two huge square exhausts with vanes in them. And it was just, it sounded more like a rocket than a jet. I don't know. I even think he did mention that it was liquid methane powered, but there again, you know, working on the disk technology, I really could care less what was rolling around at Area 51, but it did catch my eye.
As a result of going public, have there been any attempts made on your life?
One day when I was getting on Interstate 15, driving down Charleston Boulevard, a car came up alongside of me, and I thought he was just trying to race me to get on the freeway. This was after I had left the project. It was a white, boxy-looking car. Exactly what make and model, I don't know. But I accelerated to get on the freeway to go fast, and there was a gunshot, and the back of the car was hit, and I skidded off into the median. And I stopped, and I was frightened, and I just stood there because I thought the guy was going to be alongside of me and just shoot me. I had nothing to do. I was essentially paralyzed with fear, and I waited there, and then nothing else happened. And do I know it was a government agent trying to kill me? No. Could it have been a drive-by shooting? Maybe. You know, so it was an attempt on my life, but by who specifically, I don't know. Though I was threatened before I had left. They threatened my wife's life and my life, so I can only put two and two together and say that they were kind of pissed at me.
In an earlier interview, you had mentioned that they had put a gun to your head. Tell us about that.
That was after we were caught out when I had the test flight schedule, and I brought some friends out to show them the disc test. We got caught out there, and the following day I was debriefed down at Indian Springs Air Force Base. And I was in the room with the security guards that caught us, my supervisor and some other people, and some other security personnel. Yeah, they were essentially grilling me about security and, you know, how could I possibly bring people out there. And I guess I wasn't as responsive as they would like, and they got in my face, and one of them pulled the sidearm out, you know, just pushed it against me.
Have you maintained any contacts with your colleagues out at S4?
No, I never heard from anyone other than for a very brief time after I left. Dennis, who was my supervisor, did try and make contact with me at the meeting place was the Union Plaza Hotel, and I took a friend of mine, Gene Huff, down there, and another friend, a former colleague and scientist from Los Alamos, and we saw him, but I also did recognize some security personnel walking around there from S4, so whether or not it was a setup or what was going on or was trying to talk to me, we never found out, and we left. It just was a real strange situation. I never heard from him since.
As we enter the 21st century, how has your experience changed your beliefs?
Well, if you want to word the question, how are my opinions changed? I would say considerably. Before I was at S4, I was more or less one of the guys that thought, you know, all these government conspiracy and UFO buffs and things like that were complete lunatics. I even remember before I was involved there, a friend showed me a little newspaper clipping and said John Lear was giving a lecture who was touting that aliens from another world came to Earth and there's 70 different species. And I remember laughing on the phone that this guy had lost his mind. And I was also under the impression that, you know, boy, the government's all for the people, and they, you know, they're out here to protect us and all that. You know, after the experiences I had there, everything is completely turned around. You know, the government is doing everything but looking out for us. I mean, the only thing they're looking out is for themselves. You know, obviously the ET craft do exist. Something had to build them, so there must be aliens. And since there are, and the craft are there must be some sort of factory and an entire civilization somewhere. And if in fact that is true, and it apparently is, then there must be others. Actual crafts and technology from another world. And that's probably the most important event in history. It kind of moved from science fiction into reality in my mind. And it really just, I guess, opened my eyes. We can duplicate it. If we can understand what a device is or how something operates or what its physical makeup is, that's great. But if we can't duplicate it, it's useless to us. So there's really two phases to the project going on there. It's understanding what we're looking at, and then once we understand it, is can we duplicate it with earthly materials and earthly technology? And, you know, unless we've got a handle on both of them, all that technology is useless to us. And if it turns out we can't do that, all we have is one single prized possession that we have to take care of, and that's it.
After all that's been said and done, would you do this over again? What would you do differently?
I would probably have played along for a longer time. I would like to have known a little bit more about the technology, and probably kept quiet if I could have, and possibly never have said anything. I almost wish I had done that. You know, it's it's really only caused headaches and problems. But I believe if I was given the opportunity again to go back in time and redo it, I think I pretty much would have just shut up and gone along with the program. I would have much preferred that instead of the Navy or whoever it was that hand-picked a few renegade scientists here and there, that they turn it over to some more qualified people. Obviously, I was not the most qualified person on propulsion or field propulsion or anything of that sort. I was just some guy. I mean, I could have named 10 or 12 other guys that were more qualified than me. But, you know, if they turned it over to the scientific community and not just a couple guys here in the United States, I mean, you need a large group of people in a large lab to research what's going on there, not a little quiet installation. It's the security itself that prevents them from getting anywhere. I mean, they never do work hand in hand. You can't have a military mind. Science itself must communicate. You have to have a free exchange of ideas. That's how things progress. And when you clamp down on a security system like that, where you work in isolated groups and ideas cannot be exchanged, you don't get anywhere, and that's the problem they have.
What does the future hold for Bob Lazar?
Well, I'm not really involved in any of that stuff anymore. That's kind of put behind me. I have my own businesses that I work at, some computer graphics, some consultation, other technical jobs, radiation detectors, and a few other things like that. So really, I just go about my life, and that's, you know, something that happened that was fantastic, and it's over, but it's kind of hard to shake it loose. But eventually I will, and that'll be that. I think all the surveillance and everything stopped. I don't think anyone's bothering to monitor me. I've said everything that I know. It's been all over the place, so it's kind of a done deal. As far as whether or not there are any craft out there, I believe, you know, they were out and gone in probably the late '89, early '90, and the only thing people see now out there are either flares or planes coming into land, but that's about it.
Did you have an interest in flying saucers or science fiction in general as a child?
I was never interested in flying saucers as a child. Science fiction, you know, I watched Star Trek, I guess, with everyone else back then, but for the most part, yeah, I didn't even believe in flying saucers up until I was employed at S4.
I couldn't help at one point in my discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children, wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. Thank you all. God bless you all.